All right, so everybody wants to speak English fluently, right? I mean, not just like get by in a basic conversation, like really think in English.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to do a deep dive today into a guide that says it can get you fluent from day one,
Oh, wow.
which I got to say, I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, right? From day one.
But at the same time, I mean, if anyone can make language learning fun, it's got to be us.
Definitely. There are so many approaches out there, and, I'm always up for exploring a new one.
For sure. So this guide really jumps right into it. And
Oh.
it says that fluency isn't about perfection.
Okay.
It's about communication. So being able to get your point across, even if you make a couple of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, and that's a really crucial point. I mean, psychologically speaking, so much of the struggle in language learning is just getting over that fear of making mistakes, sounding wrong.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've totally been there, like just fumbling for words and feeling like everyone's judging my grammar.
Yeah.
But the guide makes this point that even native speakers, they mess up all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
It's really about communicating your meaning effectively. And this guide seems to get that. Like they're really trying to encourage learners to embrace being imperfect.
Yeah.
Which is great. So what are some of the ways that they suggest people can kind of build up that confidence?
So one of the big things, and this probably won't come as a surprise to anyone, but it's immersion.
Right.
Surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible. So they talk about things like changing the language on your phone,
Oh, interesting.
watching movies without subtitles, even like talking to yourself in English.
Huh. That's interesting. I think immersion can definitely be really helpful, but I do wonder if it's enough on its own. Because it can be really overwhelming for some learners, especially beginners.
Yeah,
And without some structure, I think people can lose motivation pretty quickly.
absolutely. I think that's a good point. And the guide tries to balance that out a little bit with what they call the 20-minute daily challenge.
What is that?
So basically, you commit to just 20 minutes a day
Okay,
of active English practice.
got it.
So that's not just like passively reading or listening to something.
Okay.
It's about actually producing the language.
I see. Yeah, so they're tapping into that idea of active recall, right? Like forcing yourself to actually retrieve and use information.
Right.
Even if it's just for those short bursts, it really does help strengthen those neural pathways in your brain. And that's way more effective than just sort of passively taking things in.
Right. So it's kind of about quality over quantity in a way.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything super complicated either. I mean, they suggest things like recording yourself speaking, having conversations, obviously, or even just like narrating your daily activities, as you're going about your day.
Yeah, I like that because I think that can be adapted to a lot of different learning styles and things like that.
Absolutely.
So another thing that they really emphasize is what they call this mistake mindset.
A mistake mindset.
And so the idea is that instead of getting like super discouraged when you mess up, you just kind of laugh it off.
Yeah.
Or analyze what went wrong, and then you just keep moving forward.
I love that. That actually ties in with a lot of really interesting learning theories, like the idea of the growth mindset. Seeing mistakes as opportunities for growth instead of as failures,
Right.
which is super important for building confidence and resilience as a learner. Of course, getting feedback from a teacher or a tutor can be really helpful too,
Yeah,
in terms of actually refining your skills.
for sure. So it sounds like kind of having that balance of self-directed learning with some expert guidance is probably the ideal.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so this next one, I got to say, sounds a little bit strange at first, but it's what they call the mirror method.
The mirror method.
Yeah, so they suggest practicing sentences in front of a mirror
Oh,
and really paying attention to how your mouth is forming the sounds.
interesting. That might sound a little unusual, but there is actually some good reasoning behind that. I mean, actors and public speakers use this technique all the time to improve their articulation and their presence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that visual feedback can really help you fine-tune the physical aspects of pronunciation.
Huh. I never thought about it that way.
Ah.
So you're kind of bringing a visual element to your pronunciation practice then.
Exactly.
That's almost like a form of kinesthetic learning or something.
Yeah, you could say that.
Right.
Engaging multiple senses can definitely make learning more effective.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So then the guide moves into talking about vocabulary.
Okay.
And they're really not big fans of just like memorizing lists of words.
Right. The old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Instead, they say you should focus on learning words in context, using them right away,
Uh-huh.
and finding ways to connect them to your own personal experiences.
I like that.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot more engaging than just staring at flashcards. So is there like a cognitive reason why that approach is more effective, do you think?
Yeah, so basically when we encounter words in a meaningful context like that, and then
Yeah.
we actually use them right away, it really helps us encode them into our long-term memory.
Right,
So, for example, instead of just trying to memorize the definition of the word exhilarating,
right.
you could create a sentence like, riding my bike down that hill was so exhilarating I felt like I could fly.
Yeah, that's a great example because you're linking the word to that really vivid sensory experience, and it's going to make it much more likely to stick.
Exactly. And then the guide wraps up by saying something pretty bold. They say that fluency is 30% language skills and 70% confidence.
Wow, 70% confidence. I mean, I don't know if I agree with the exact percentages, but I think the underlying point is super valid. Confidence is a huge factor in fluency.
Yeah.
I mean, when you believe in your ability to communicate, you just hesitate less, you speak more naturally, and you just enjoy the process more overall.
It makes you think about those times when you're speaking your native language and you feel completely comfortable.
You're right.
It's like you don't even have to think about it. You just express yourself.
You're not overthinking it at all. It just flows out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we talked about a bunch of different strategies here, from immersion to active practice, embracing mistakes, using visual feedback, and of course, building that confidence.
Yeah.
What was the one technique that really stood out to you the most?
You know, I am really intrigued by this idea of using visual feedback for pronunciation.
Yeah.
I think I might have to try this mirror method myself.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try and double down on that active practice time. You know, this whole deep dive has gotten me thinking. Think about a time when you felt really confident speaking any language.
Mm.
Doesn't even have to be English.
Mm.
What was it about that situation that made you feel so comfortable?
Yeah.
Was it the environment, the people you were with, or just maybe your mindset?
Mm.
Try to tap into that feeling and bring it with you on your English fluency journey.
That's great advice.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. I'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.